Hey guys, Bryce here from Flex Cortex. All content on the Flex Cortex podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not a substitution for medical advice from a qualified health professional. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Hello guys, welcome to this week's episode of Flex Cortex. Today it's just me hosting, but we are here with Saloojee, and we will be talking about some common misconceptions in the fitness industry. So we'll be talking about specifically some ones that have gained a lot of popularity over time. So we're stoked for this one. Thanks for coming on, man.
Oh man, thank you for having me.
So today we're going to kick it off with my personal favorite, well, least favorite, the Bosu ball. Let's dive into it.
The Bosu ball. The Bosu ball is, I think, a very popular implement as of late. I mean, looks cool or it's different. It has the aspect of sensationalism people find interesting. I think a lot of newer coaches just like using it to draw attention. I don't. It seems to. I think the essence of it is that people try to use it to simulate a certain amount of instability, and like, oh, doing exercise on this is going to make you more stable because you're using an unstable surface. And I mean, it's at least it's like a solid intention, I think. Like the benefit of stability is very real, but I don't think the way that they go about it using the Bosu ball is necessarily the best way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's more or less just the lack of knowledge, right? And people thinking that just because something is unstable, people think that it's training stability, right? Obviously, we know that, me and you know that stability is trained in different aspects, right? So you definitely don't have to jump on a Bosu ball, but you could definitely train unilaterally and probably get much more of a benefit than doing a lateral raise on a Bosu ball or I've seen squats a lot on a Bosu ball. That's a common one too.
Yeah, I've seen that one a lot too. And I mean, when you think about it, I feel like the instability of the Bosu ball, it's definitely an unstable surface. Like that's for sure. But I feel like more than anything, it's just a level of instability for like the equilibrium in your ear, right? Like that aids balance. It's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not adding a level of instability to the muscle. And so we know, right, the stability, deviating the center of mass or reducing the base of support because it forces the muscle to stabilize or to resist force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's different, I think, from just reducing the sense of balance that you have.
This is true. Yeah. I definitely feel like, again, though, I feel like it's just, it's a reflection of influencers. It's a reflection of the impact that they have on society, right? And I think that's definitely one of the big things. Like, you'll definitely see like a surge in the use of equipment after something's posted by one of their favorite influencers. So I think it's obviously good and bad what the fitness industry can do and what it can impact, obviously, right?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the people who hold the power, quote unquote, so to speak, or influence them being influencers in the industry are probably not suited to it very well. And
Mm-hmm.
it's tough. And I mentioned this previously, briefly on the episode about stoicism that I just posted, but the idea that fame or having an audience will bias you or predispose you and skew your decisions because it becomes harder and harder to make decisions with the genuine interest of people in mind, right? Because power doesn't corrupt, influence doesn't corrupt. It just reveals what kind of person you are once you have the ability to do whatever you want. And so it sets apart the people who are interested in money, who just want more followers, want more clients, whatever, want more money. And more often than not, unfortunately as it is, the people in the space are not altruistic, right? Or their primary goal is monetary gain or social status, and that precedes the actual benefit or the actual concern that they have for people. And so once that happens, then it will now turn the sort of information that they provide, and it will no longer be, I would say, sound or true information, right? The issue becomes maintaining the audience, doing new things that will trigger people so that they tune in and see what they're all about,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think it depends on them realizing that how much power they have and how much influence they have, quote unquote, right? And then what they choose to do with that power, or what they choose to do with that influence, right? I mean, they could be putting out a lot of good information, but I think a lot of them are just in it for the fame, unfortunately, and that reflects a lot on what they post for content, because a lot of it just comes down to what they're. I think it's money, right? I think whenever it comes down to it, it's just money, no matter how much they can make, what kind of sponsorships they can get, and that's unfortunately the realm and the time that we live
Yeah.
in.
And, things that aren't new don't tend to garner as much attention because the way that social media has changed, literally, rewired our brains is that our attention spans are so small. We don't have as much patience for, you know, things that aren't new. Like we're constantly seeking out a new stimulus in order to sort of keep us going, right? Or on the needle, so to speak. And so, it's repeated, almost ad nauseum, but,
Yeah,
like the fundamentals aren't sexy, but they won't work, right? There's nothing new under the sun. Everything has been recycled or reused, and the oldest methods tend to be the most true or the most reliable, but it doesn't sell as well. And so it's a recipe for disaster where, you have fundamentals that work best, but the way that everyone works is that they don't like the fundamentals, and deviating from the fundamentals is what makes money. It's obvious that people are going to, content creators are going to sort of skew towards this, whatever path is going to make them the most successful, make them the most money.
very well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things, right? I mean, the industry itself is great. Obviously, like I'm very thankful to be a part of it. But I mean, obviously, as what you're trying to do, and as what I'm trying to do is put out good information, help people be able to see through and kind of like identify any kind of issues or concerns in the industry itself. Because I mean, just for somebody coming across it, like how are they going to know the difference, right? For stability, for example, if just like a random person came across a post and then they saw, like, let's say they saw your post on stability or they saw my post on stability, right? And then they go to somebody else's page, they have 100K, and they post a stability routine using a Bosu ball. I mean, they're probably more likely to be using that routine, probably saving that workout, and then telling their
Yeah.
friends how awesome it was,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And this has been discussed, right? The idea of the backyard hero versus the influencer is that the backyard or the hometown hero has the idea of a coach, right? You don't have a large reach, but you don't have a lot of clients per se. Probably under 100 for most coaches, but you're able to sort of genuinely impact their lives in a very meaningful way. You're able to be very hands-on with them, to teach them these kind of things, to teach them this correct information, to remove the misinformation. And then you have the influencer who maybe will not be able to
Mm-hmm.
affect people's lives as deeply, but also has a very large reach, and so can potentially help a lot of people at a very surface level. And so both have their benefits and both have their values. But the issue is that the the influencer position by its very nature is not catered to people who have this predisposition for deep understanding, right? And so for you to enter the fitness industry with the intention of becoming an influencer or to do what influencers do, it's already sort of skewing you towards this path that is, in my opinion, going to be less helpful to people, right? Because again, like just the very nature of the job is that in order to stay relevant and to get relevant, you need to deviate from fundamental principles. You need to sort of throw the basics out of the window and just find new things that are going to shock people. And so, yeah, just by virtue, and like it's not true for all fields, Like there are fields that are not fitness that the influencer may potentially do well. I don't know. I don't know enough about that to really say. But in the fitness field specifically, this is what I think it is, right? Just that, wanting to be an influencer, the influencer by default kind of needs to scrap the fundamentals in order to be successful.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just a matter of wanting to have an impact and providing value to your followers, right? I think that's the most important thing. Like they should be following you for a reason. They should be coming to your page and staying up to date with what you post for a specific purpose, not just because you're shredded or because you're jacked. So if they're following you because you're shredded or because you're jacked, I think you're missing the point. It's like what you said before, right? You're kind of missing the whole point or the whole aspect of having social media and being able to actually reach people and make a difference, right? So I do have a lot of respect for larger accounts. We'll say larger accounts, right? Larger accounts that have that utilize their resource and utilize their following and actually take that time to actually put out good information versus just putting out what gets them likes and views. Because I feel like we're in a society where we're so vanity based that we almost get fixated on likes, we get fixated on views, and we get fixated on engagement, right? We get fixated on those things so much that we almost lose sight and we lose clarity of what's actually important. So it's very refreshing that we're in a community like the Prescript crew that we're more focused on how many people we can impact on like a refined level versus like how many people can we impact on a larger scale.
Yeah, and I think that again, the nature of the influencer and just the way that the system or the way that social media works for those kind of accounts is that, again, you mentioned it, right? Like it's all about how you look, it's all about social capital. And like the kind of people that influencers reach are the kind of people who lose interest the second the video is longer than like 15 seconds, right? And so again, like if you're trying to go into the industry to do good and to spread good,
yeah.
but you're taking the path where people's attention spans does not exceed, again, like it's like 30 seconds, like you're going to have a very, very, very limited amount of benefit that you can bring people, right? Like take any influencer you care to name, right? Like a large portion of those people follow them because they've distilled things down to this, digestible, quote unquote, digestible soundbite, this quick and easy way, this quick tip to do things. We're not going to sit through an hour of a lecture and take notes about how to move properly. Like that's just not the people that the influencers are going to reach. And so, it depends on who you want to work with, right? You always need to have that understanding. If you're going to go the influencer route or seek out that kind of position, then you need to understand who your audience is, because you're not going to make it in an influencer position while trying to sort of still provide like long videos or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think the whole aspect is like what people are trying to use social media for, right? So I mean, for us, I'd say we utilize it more on the education route, right? We're wanting to make connections, kind of form a community, but then also use it for education, but then also educating. And I think these other people are just like following somebody for motivation, right? Motivation or trying to help them get ready for a session, right? And I think that's the difference. Is they want to see a picture of somebody that's jacked or somebody that's shredded or somebody that's their ideal body or their ideal figure, because it'll help them probably get to the gym that day. Whereas, for us, like I'll be there anyways. Whether I want to be there or I don't want to be there, I'll be there. So I think it all depends on what you're wanting to use social media for. And it definitely shows in the accounts
agree.
that you
and this
follow, right?
becomes a much, much, much larger conversation about discipline versus motivation. And this is a conversation that I think is a perpetual conversation that needs to be had, whether you're a coach, whether you're an athlete, even whether you're just a gen pop person trying to get into the gym, once or twice a week to slightly improve your quality of life. You're right? Like the social media and the influencing world is so focused on motivation instead of discipline. Why? Because motivation is sensational, but discipline is not. Discipline is do the work, and you stop talking about it. That's all it is. You do the work and you show up every day. Like that's all it is, right? It's so simple, but it's so difficult for people because
Yep.
they want to be kept, they want to be, they always want to be fed this validation, this you can do it, and motivation, in order to rely on motivation, it's a sort of a constant input that you need to be feeling. Because the second the motivation stops, and if you lack discipline, then you stagnate, right? You stop changing, you stop
Mm-hmm.
striving, your efforts cease. The discipline is a self-feeding machine where you wind it up and the motion fuels
100%.
itself. It's like those watches
Mm-hmm.
that it's like the gears are fueled by the motion of the hand. Like you move once and it keeps moving. And so again, like discipline is not an attractive concept to people because it sucks for
Mm-hmm.
most people. It's difficult, it
Yep.
hurts, and it's not comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've talked about it before with other coaches, right? Like motivation is so subjective, right? Like how can you really tell like what is motivation, right? Because it just changes so much day to day. So like I think it's a very important topic to have with other coaches, but also with clients, right? Like discipline's what's important. Discipline's what's going to get you through workouts that you don't want to do. And like I'd say people always assume that as coaches we're always like motivated, quote unquote, right? But like no, we're not. It's definitely the discipline aspect, right? There's going to be days that you don't want to go. There's going to be days that you don't want to work out, but it's the fact of discipline, and it's the fact of what you're kind of accepting this whole journey, right? So you have to be able to put things aside and just go and get it done, right? It's like it's all the work that gets done behind the scenes. That's what's important, right? It's like not having to make a post, like a huge post on social media about like, oh, I don't want to work out today, but I did anyways. It's like you don't really need to be looking for approval. You don't really need to be looking for somebody to tell you you did a good job, right? If you want to be doing
Yeah.
it for yourself,
And
then that's the reason you'll be doing it for
I
yourself.
think you had a very good point there. Motivation will not get you to your goals, but discipline will,
But
right? Again, you can't rely on discipline to take you all the way from point A to point B. Discipline is necessary. Sorry, you can't rely on motivation to do that. Motivation is
yeah,
still
yep,
necessary, however, but motivation gets you started, and that's all it does. Motivation should create in you information, however way you choose to digest it or to take it. Motivation is going to be information that creates this desire for
mm-hmm.
you to begin that journey, right? Like motivation should be, and we'll use the fitness context here. Motivation should be, you know, I want to work out
Mm-hmm.
because
Yep.
it's going to make me healthier. I'll have more years in the end of my life. I'll be able to play with my kids, play with my grandkids. I won't be out of breath doing things. I'll be able to move more easily. I'll be able to enjoy life more. Whatever it is, right? There's so many benefits, and all of that qualifies as motivation. But you need to take all of that, and that needs to be the reason why you start. But then you need to stop thinking about that and just discipline. That's all it is. It's like motivation is going to give you the reasons to get started, but then motivation
Mm-hmm.
stops being
Exactly.
useful, and discipline is going to be what gets you there.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you mentioned that. I was literally just going to say that
Yeah, one hundred
motivation can
percent.
be the reason that you start, but discipline has to be the reason that you continue. Because like everybody will be like, well, right now, like and you wouldn't know the amount of times like I've had people come in and say like, oh, like I'm so motivated right now, right? But then like a good question to ask them is like, what about when motivation isn't high? Like, what do you do, right? Are you just not going to come in? You're going to drop me as a coach? Like, so I think it's a very important topic to be had, or discussion to be had, because I don't think a lot of coaches do talk about it with their clients, but that's probably when people see a lot of drop off, right? Because I think clients expect coaches, like especially from us, to be feeding them motivation, right? But I'm like, you can't be fed motivation internally. Like that has to be something that you want for yourself. but it also has to come down to your mental strength, right? You have to be able to actually commit to a program. You have to be able to commit to the lifestyle, and that comes down to the whole discipline aspect. So I think it's awesome that you are obviously so passionate about it, but I think it's a very important topic that isn't
Yeah.
discussed enough.
And it
Again,
sucks,
like
right? Because it
lots of things
definitely
in the industry
limits us,
that are brushed
so to
over.
speak, to the amount of people that we can work with. Because but this is why I think education about this topic of discipline and motivation is so important, is that, people who aren't educated about the idea of discipline and motivation, you're never going to retain clients who only understand motivation. You need, the client needs to understand this discipline and be able to appreciate it. And so that's why I think it's important to educate coaches on the subject, because it sort of teaches that aspect itself. Like, forget about the motivation, get them to start, and then, implement the discipline. And like, again, this is why I think
Mhm.
education in terms of a deep level of understanding of exercise itself, the benefits of exercise, all of that stuff, whatever you want it to be, like the proprioception, osteoporosis, whatever it is, that education is so important, because motivation can be good and it can be bad. Like, I don't want someone coming to me and telling me that they want to work out because they saw David Goggins' video. I want someone to come and tell me that they want to work out because they want to live to see their grandkids running around and be able to throw them over their head, right? Because there are good kinds of motivation and there are bad kinds of motivation, and bad kinds of motivation aren't lasting. They're not meaningful, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think it I think it comes down to,
Yeah, I was
well,
about
as
to
a
say
coach
that.
specifically, finding out the root cause of why your client's coming to you. I don't want to say the term why because the why is kind of cliche, but I would say the root cause that someone's paying you, the root cause they came to you to begin with, right? Because like I feel like a lot of coaches don't actually do this in their first, like their intake process. Um, and you have to reevaluate this too, right? And this will help with the retention, first of all, of you holding on to that client, but it'll also help with that client's ability to actually maintain that program and actually stay working out. Because if they're just coming to you because they want to lose 20 pounds, what happens when they lose 20 pounds? And I almost guarantee you the root cause they're coming to you is not because they want to lose 20 pounds. So I think a lot of it is people are in this industry for the wrong reason. They're in this industry because they want money, and they're not in this industry because they actually care and they want to leave an impact.
Yeah,
And I think
a
that's the
hundred
biggest
percent.
fault, right?
And
Is they're
that's
just in it to
why,
make
I,
like the
like, you
quickest
hit the nail
buck.
on the head with the why. Like, it's a very sort of overused term it's very overused, but it's so true. Your job as a trainer is to help the client understand the why and give them a good why. That's my opinion. And a lot of people disagree with me. Some people will say that no, your job is only to provide them what they ask you for, and that's it. I don't think so, right? And we talked about this last time. Like, my job as a trainer doesn't stop at physical benefit. My job as a trainer is to provide them with something meaningful, right? And so within that conversation is the idea of a meaningful why. So, for example, like, basic thing, right? Like, appearance isn't forever. Looking better, I don't think is sufficient reason to
Yeah.
start working out. I don't think it's a good reason to, like, it's a reason that's real. I think it isn't necessarily bad. Take that back. It isn't a bad reason, but it's bad if it's the only reason. And so your job as a trainer to say, no, 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 no. It's not only about looking good. It's about this, and this, and be able to educate them properly on the correct reasons for motivation, or the correct aspects of motivation that matter, and then you start. That's what I think.
Yeah, I feel like a big issue is typically just with the industry itself is that people aren't like they're not, like I said before, they're not in it for the right reasons, right? Like and also they don't know their reason why they actually started coaching. I think a lot of people think that they're just counting reps and sets, and maybe you are, but I think the sooner you realize that you're doing a lot more for that person, like I mean, you're helping them with like lifestyle changes, you're helping them by just being their support network, you're helping them by being their educator or their teacher, and you're helping them by obviously the reps and sets in the program. But I think the sooner people realize that you're taking on a pretty big responsibility when somebody hires you as a coach. And then it also affects the quality of that service, right? So I feel like you're definitely missing out on a lot of potential if you're just giving them like a program and being like, here, man, this is it. So I feel like the sooner you actually, and it's the whole talk about like, coaching people and programming computers, right? About the prescript thing. So I think the sooner that a lot of coaches realize that, the industry itself
Yeah,
will
and
be,
okay, I personally think
filtered
that there
properly. And
should
I
be
think that there'll be a lot of
a much
coaches in here
higher
that want to
barrier
be
of
in here for the
entry
right
for a
reason.
coach in order if you want to be a good coach. Like if you got into coaching and started in the industry just because you like the reps and sets, then all you're going to be all you're going to be able to offer to clients is just reps and sets, right? Unless you have a solid backing behind what you do, you have an understanding of the more mental side, the psychology of it, and there's genuinely a meaningful reason, that brings you to do what you do, then only then can you instill within the client a deeper sense of purpose and be able to elevate them
Mm-hmm.
to a higher level beyond just reps and sets. And again, like this is a controversial take, I'm sure. A lot of people don't have the capacity to look deeper because for them working out was something
Mm-hmm.
superficial and they're scared to make it more than that. And as a consequence, in my opinion, you know, they may struggle to provide a very positive and meaningful service, right? Or they may struggle with to and this is they may struggle to create happy clients long term, right? And again, take this all with a grain of salt. This is a lot of this is just conjecture in my opinion, but you know, again, if it's all reps and sets for you and it's nothing more, you can give the client reps and sets and they may change and they may improve
Mm-hmm. For
superficially
sure.
and physically. But again, that's not why I do it, right? That's not all of why I do it. And that's not the be all and end all. And so, like, if that was how I did things and I only improved my clients' reps and sets and that was it, I would say that I failed as a coach, right? But again, it's, to each their own, right? To each their own way of doing things, motivation.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the benefit of tracking so many different metrics, right? Is the more metrics you have, the better, because it just shows how many different areas you can improve with them as a client, right? So I think the more metrics are, the better in that regard. But also, like you said, we're we're more than just like coaches. We're more than just like counting reps and sets. As much as people think that we're counting reps and sets, then I think it's just a lack of information in the industry itself. But then it's also just like you can tell when somebody's passionate about what they do. And I think if somebody isn't passionate about it, then they're more likely to just assign reps and sets. And like they're probably lacking on the communication aspect. But you also have to take some fault and some blame if your client doesn't succeed in that sense, because they're coming to you for your expertise, right? So obviously, it's not 100% on the client or 100% on you, but if you
Yeah,
didn't
absolutely.
meet them halfway, or if you didn't fulfill your end of the deal, then I think you're failing them as a coach. Yeah, and to bounce off that too, like I think a lack of passion definitely reflects the lack of programming, in regards of like structure. So I do feel like people try to reinvent the wheel when they're not confident in their ability to coach, because they're trying to like wow that client and get that wow aspect. Because I've seen it quite a bit just working like in commercial gyms, that you'll have like a PT that comes on and they'll be getting the clients to do some sort of abstract routine that I've never seen before, and it looks like it's from a movie or a stunt double fight scene or something. Um, and I do just think it's a topic that's worth discussing, right?
just because it's yeah, for sure.
It's one of those things.
Again, it's such a personal field that has such a great degree of impact on people's lives, and again, their livelihood, their mental health to some degree, depending on how deep you get into it. And I don't think it's a field you can be half in, right? You can't take people's physical health into your own hands, and to a larger degree their mental health, their emotional health, and only be half in. I don't think it works that way, right? I don't know.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if you are half in, like, why are you in this industry then? And that's the biggest question you have to ask yourself at that point in time, right? Is like, there's lots of other stuff you can do. There's lots of other careers you could jump into. So
yeah,
if
you want money,
you're not in this because you care about people, and if you're not in this because you want to make a change,
that's
then
all you're after.
maybe it's time to try something different.
That's the right place for you, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, man, it's a very important thing to discuss. So I'm glad that we talked about it today. But I think that pretty much wraps it up. We'll keep this one remotely short-ish, still half an hour, but but again, man, it is always a absolute pleasure to have you on. I think today's topic was really important to discuss, especially for any new people wanting to get into the industry itself too. Just the biggest thing is make sure that you're educated. Make sure that, and I always tell new PTs this, because new PTs always ask me, like, what's the best course? What's the best cert? When it comes down to it, there really is no best course or best cert to get into training. Just keep an open mind. Realize that you're like this size. Realize that you have so much to learn and so much room to grow as an individual and as a coach getting into this industry. If you come into it thinking that you're already up here, like way up here, you're going to get knocked down really quick. And you're probably not in it for the right reasons, kind of like what we discussed, right? You're probably just in it for the vanity reasons of just like looking good, or you're in it for money and just taking people's money. So keep an open mind, be willing to learn, and don't try to reinvent the wheel. That's the biggest thing.
Nope.
We don't want to see any crazy single leg,
and if you find yourself
unilateral
for your clients, hit up
lateral raises on it with dumbbells on a BOSU ball.
Straight.
But anyways, man, let's
yeah.
Thank you, my man. Thank you. Or Saloojee, man. Saloojee is just as good of a source as well. But where can people stay?
Yeah,
where can people stay up to date with
Instagram,
with your stuff? I know that you've been pumping out podcasts like crazy.
Also on Instagram, as well as most streaming platforms, the Multifarious Podcast. Website, www.multifarioustrength.com. Shoot me an email at info@multifarioustrength.com. That's about it. Awesome, dude. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate you making the time to come on. I think it was a great discussion that some people can definitely get some benefit from if they're wanting to get. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.